All right, so here we keep on going. We continue our walk around the wheel on the left angle, on the right angle cross of the laws with the 2-4. So here we go. The 2-4, determination. The strength of person that can enjoy overcoming adversity to achieve its goals, or discomfort with adversity, a basic binary. If you can't explain why a law is necessary, you can only fight for it in terms of determination and belief. In Western society, we're often confronted with the fact that politicians think that we need a law for something that none of us ever thought we needed a law for. These things happen all the time. It's part of the Orwellian consciousness of modern bureaucracies end up having to deal with them. It's very difficult about that in this contrast. Some looking at that too. And what they say is you really know what we need. You know what we need. You know what we need in order to keep everything there. This doesn't mean this such higher binaries. The one and the two lines are connected to the instinctive process. They are very tight binary. One is willing through investigation to refine. The other one is only interested in imposing the law. Nothing else, just to maintain the law. There's no refinement here. As a matter of fact, there's the attempt to propagandize, the attempt to get others to accept the law. The White Book lines. You're looking at the lines of the Rei Fi Ching. Every single line has a dual description. The original description that was written in the original Rei Fi Ching, and then a description what was written in the Book of Letters, which was called the White Book. And you can see this aspect of this line because it's always italicized. For the exalted, you have the strength derived from maintaining one's values in the face of opposition or condition. In other words, whether people are against you or not, whether the times you have changed or not, we're still going to follow Sharia law. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that everything has changed around us. The other side of it is a lack of strength where values are threatened by opposition or conditioning. And there's so much fear here. And what is the fear? The fear of the 50th at the Monday Lab is called the fear of taking responsibility. The fear of responsibility. What law really is a way of depersonalizing we do that all the time when we send our children to school. We give up our responsibility to train them, to educate them, and we give somebody else the authority to do that based on a law. The 50th gate is where schools are built. There are all kinds of schools built here. You can see that this is a very, very primitive basic education, the most basic education. And you can also see that in the first and the second line of the laws, that without the third line, you're going to end up, because of the four, is that you're going to end up with simply the primitive law being very powerfully disseminated so that it becomes the foundation that becomes very difficult to break. It also tells you something about the nature of the law. The foundation of all laws that becomes very difficult to break. It also tells you something about the nature of the law. The foundation of all laws tribal. All laws tribal. It's why the collective and the tribe have this hands on each other's throat process that they're dealing with. The second line, democracy, the ones that don't vote are the ones that don't want to change the law because it's too much trouble to change the law because you have to go out and vote. If the law that was good enough for my father is good enough for my son, why should I come out of the house and go to all the trouble to vote? I may not even win. You have to see that the not self of the 2-4 is really kind of spooky because underneath you have a fourth line, and we know one of the things of the fourth line, the 7.4, the abdicator. To be a hermit abdicator tells you about their commitment to society. And if you're 2-4 not self hermit abdicator who's on the cross of the law, come on now. You're not interested in amendments. They don't want to add any corollaries. They don't want to make any exceptions. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, for thousands of years. Every time you go to a theater and the hero finally gets the villain and you have your catharsis, you're right in line with this law. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Come in as a 2-4 and you earn eye for an eye. Well, okay, if you want to change that, let them change that. I'm very democratic. The difficulty here is that you call the 2-4. It's not like you're walking them up to change the law. You're not. You're walking them up to disseminate the law in an even more powerful way than before and influence even more people. There are two kinds of missionaries. There is the dedicated missionary that can only help and serve the common good, however fallible that may be, and there are missionaries of ignorance and evil. They're dangerous creatures. They're the ones that say all these new laws are garbage. Let's go back to an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Very clean, very straightforward, very quiet, very obedient society. Singapore got rid of bad behavior by whipping people all the time. After enough people were whipped, you didn't really want to mess around. This is the 1-2 law. As I said, let us thank our lucky stars that there are 1, 3 in the beginning, because it's not as much that the 1 is the law. You get to see that this is a part of us. We are many laws, and it's a battle inside of us what wins. The tribe cannot function any other way. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't know any other way. And it's not like it's going to wake up and stop being a tribe. We're not going to get rid of the circuitry. And then again, you see the dilemma. You can see the tribal law when it comes to duality. It's very, very rigid. Everything from female circumcision, this rigid law of ownership that chattel most women into that in some sentence. And you have to see that the tribal law is alive and well. It's not going away. That's why shyness is everything. We have to accept the eye for an eye in each of us. We are killing monkeys. We're just killing monkeys, those bodies, those vehicles. Then we go to the 2-5. The 2-5 begins the process of challenge, deep challenge to the primitive law. It's the bridge to the 3-4, and the 3-4 carries with it what we call intuition. Remember, this is where intuition is sourced. The 5 obviously is heretical. There's always the possibility of being called to their heresy. And unfortunately, 2-5 have learned that rather than the 5-1, which normally carries the burden of heresy, decide to be repressive as long as they can behind closed door blinds and will be able to break the law in their own environment. But every once in a while they get caught, and it's when they get caught when you're on the other way to another prison, not the only one, not the one of their own construct, but the one that will be provided. They become living symbols of the absurdity of the law. It's the kind of thing that has taken place in the drug culture many years. You get some actor who's got glaucoma, and he wants marijuana in order to be able to get rid of his glaucoma. And he gets busted for marijuana, and suddenly he becomes a wonderful spokesperson on his way to jail to let everybody know how absurd primitive laws can be. We have this all the time in many, many different ways, but they're the ones that get punished. They're the ones you don't expect to suddenly be pulled out and say, "This is not right. You don't have to cut off my head for this. I was just shoplifting. There must be another way to punish me than to cut off my head." It really doesn't make any sense. It's a nice place to be a 2-5. In this day and age, you have the heresy blocks. There are much anger directed at primitive law or not directed at it. As a result of it on both sides, fundamentalism is lost in looking for this law. And here we are. We are in the 5. Remember, we are on the plane of the 5. That's the advantage of the 2-5s today, because there's a harmony to the fact that we need vast collective laws. That's why the 5 teaches. Uh huh. So it's the 5 that teaches. That's the one that does the real teaching.